right, hey guys, how we doing? Here we are on the 13th. It's Wednesday, the 13th of November, and crypto today. So ran the poll, pretty tight here now that I check back at our numbers. But it looks like the Binance coin here is at least tied for first here. So we'll just take a quick look here. Now we've been through this a couple of times, and not too distant past here. Now a couple of things you might be worth considering here. Now, previously, we've been just focused on this part of it here, but I think that this might be worth taking a look at here as an alternate. Well, I mean, not an alternate, maybe what we end up getting here, depending on what follows. So I don't think we can dismiss the idea that we might have just a giant diagonal going on here, just to start off from our low. I was not really leaning that direction until I spotted something here, just in taking a look here to update. Of course, we've got this set of median lines here that frames the market. Now, of course, we're well outside here. This is the 150, maybe perhaps, right? So I just make that point. So there's a couple of things here. One, this is fairly typical for a diagonal. So here we're coming back to the median line, the 1272. We're right in this window here between the 272 and the 1382. Pretty typical for a diagonal for the third. But this is what really caught my attention. So you guys know I'll talk about this often, but typically on a time frame that we would be not so large here out on a daily, but it's just the same idea applies. So we break the golden zone here. So when that's the case, what do? You go, whoops. Well, here we can take that off. Go back one. Right into the golden zone where we get our reaction. So that has me thinking perhaps we're in a big diagonal here. I mean, that's as technical a low as we can get, right? So they're coming out of there. So are we going to carry on here up to a 5 here, right? So we can, right, this algo bought it here. They play defense here. They're going to stay long until they get there. Boy, that would finish up that diagonal pretty nicely. So it's just something else to consider here. So let's go down to an 8-hour on this. Let me get this off of here. We'll kind of dig into the subdivision here. You can make a case for the ABC. It's a little iffy here, but once we get into the 3, 4, 5, you'd either got a double bottom here for your 1, 2. Pretty clear on the 3, little 3 into the 4, and down we come here. Now we get a little chop down here. So I think, as I recall here, we're to the 50 second target. Excuse me, second target here from right. So we get a little reaction here that creates the fourth, and then down they go to second target. So we know it's technical. When a move like that, I mean, you could do this two ways, right? So I mean, you could put a channel on it, more traditional. Pick your pivot, and here just give this a little throw over. But when it's that tight, that's when I would more typically go to a regression channel. I'm just going to take pivot high to pivot low. Just pump that on here. So I'm getting, so it's similar. 2 standard deviations from the mean here now with fairly good break here. So you can make a case now that with that break, this correction has ended, and now we're off on our way into here the next trend. So let's take this off here. Let's go down, let's go to a 3-hour here, because this is where it gets a little tricky down here. Let's open this up a bit more. So here's our lowest low here, but it was just kind of it's just chop, right? There's no real wave structure here. We're just in a choppy box here. But the reason I wick this pivot off is because it's not until we get to this pivot that we take some wave shape here, that we get a candidate here. For well, in this case we get an impulse, right? Straight off of this pivot. Before that, kind of tough to call this 1, 2. It just looks like some maybe you had a truncation here, just some wicks that got through. It was pretty much rejected, but you kind of just get a chop box right here, and then we come out of it, we start to trend. So I'm inclined to stick with this as my 1, and this is interesting here that we get a technical pivot here, so we don't overlap the 1. So yes, it's a shallow 2, 3, 4. it's candidate, right? So I mean, it plays. So that we get the one A B, right? Double top here into the B, then straight rip down for the 2, and that's technical. So let's just put this back together here. Now remember, algorithms doesn't care about an Elliott count, so we'll just look at it this way. So from our lowest low, which is what an algo is going to use, to our pivot here, what do we do? Right? Golden zone, right? It's a tick in. So what do we immediately right off the bat? What do we know we have? Right? Once we come out of that, we've got a candidate for the golden corner pocket. Let me just get that back to our original recipe. Right, so I think we had pointed this out, and I think the last video we did, I had teed this up in the room to, hey, pay attention, guys. We got a golden corner here in BNB, and pretty good rip coming right out of that. Now, that's, right, the count here is a little unusual. So, but clearly, this median line here, and this has framed the market rather nicely. The golden corner here. So our 80%, right? That was realized pretty quickly. Right, we got to the median line. Now we're here. We're back to it. So let's tighten that up. Get you right on there. Tighten you up as well. That looks pretty solid. So here we are just hovering back at the median line, but the point being that the parallels here seem to be framing the market pretty well. So I'm going to take it here. We'll just hide it. Where are you? Let's hide you. Okay, we can bring it back if we need to. So off of this low, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pretty solid on the impulse into the 1. Now we get a sideways, kind of a shallow 2 here. If that's going to hold as our 2, so from the low here of the proposed start of the next wave at the next degree, we've come 38 to the tick. Interestingly, right, this structure seems to be at play here. We don't break it. Look at the Vegas wave. Right, holds it right there, 233, catches it, and then it looks like we're off again. So, you know, we've talked about this before. That's uncommonly shallow for a 2, just statistically, but we also know that 12% of wave 2s only make the 38. Well, there's 38 to the tick, right? 12% isn't nothing. So I'm not uncomfortable putting the 2 there. So candidate here for 1, 2, 1, 2, right? Nice 3 brings us down here into the 2. Right, so we're not quite far enough to really lock that in there, but right now I don't see another way to count that would make sense here. So if we're off on our way here in a third, well, let's see, the median lines here, right? So you could draw another set here. I'd stick with original recipe here. I don't love it as much here, but if we're just going to go up and get that third, so we could. It's going to be a little bit lower here, right? Since we only make the 38. So my point being that if we use our alternate price projection tool here, well, here's the first target where we want to try at least get to 100%. But interestingly, that would kind of tee us right up getting into the median line, but we may not get there. So this, if depending on we're going to get an impulse or we're going to get a diagonal right now, looks like we'd be teeing up for the impulse. So if we're going to get the impulse, that would put the 3 up here. Maybe we got to put the 200 over here to get that to line up and stay. But right now with the 150 on this inside set of median lines here, I don't see any reason to change that. So we maintain, right? So that as long as this pivot holds, 80% probability we get there, right? That's the key. Does that pivot hold? Can we get up there for that? Well, of course, we're going to want to pay attention to the resistance on the way. All right, because we know it'll be there. So if I get up to our prior pivot high, here's our dominant high to our low, right? So that would have us coming in to expect some resistance, and you can kind of see this shelf here, right as we go into all of this market acceptance, likely an area of resistance, right? So that would make perfect sense. We would set up the 4, and then we go. So if we can get here, right, so we get a little something like that. Now we know we're rolling here. Now that's going to be, well, let's not make any assumptions about that getting through, but boy, putting the map together, roadmap, kind of tees it up rather nicely there. Right, so we need more legs here to really confirm that we're in the third here, because this is... Right now, I mean, this is what it needs to look this way. It's off to a good start. It's not completely to the point where you can really confirm. This is, a little sloppy on the low here. Yeah, I get a nice 1-2, but I've got an atypically shallow second here, right? 12%. Yeah, I know. But so I'm going to feel a whole lot better if and when, right, emphasis, if and when we get to the 100 here. So then I'm more comfortable in this pivot, more comfortable in this pivot, and the chop down here at the low makes more sense to me if we can get through that 100. So I know I've got a good candidate here for a third. Get me to the median line here or something close as we bump into the 50. Now the whole thing starts to look better. So can you be a buyer here? You know, I mean, so just looking here, so the first algo target right here, as we do have this pocket, right? We've got a little air pocket here, right? So I would always suggest pull it over and see why, right? So we didn't, no market acceptance, so support, resistance, resistance again. So we have this little air pocket over here that we have a candidate here to get through. So for me, I would be reluctant until I see us get through it. So I like the 4 to the 5, and then of course, right, then we'd have another 4. So if we complete this 5, then this here, that 4, very solid. So technically, to be a buyer here, I wouldn't myself, right? So we're just kind of rolling here. I've got an algo target here. I've got some prior, this area here. You could run into some resistance as we try and deal with that. I want to get through, and I want to get through that little air pocket here, back over to market acceptance here, and then there'll be a secondary pivot here that will be in play as we look at that last 5. So there's not enough room there. Let me take this one off. Let's get the big one off. So one pivot at a time. So if you're a buyer here, you're potentially going to run right into that resistance, right? You've got this here, you've got this pivot here. Even if you get through, and then you're going to have to deal with that one, right? That'll be some structural resistance here. So there's not quite enough room there, particularly if we're going to go from here. If we bump into some resistance here at the 50. Which don't assume, you shouldn't assume, if we hit the 50, right, we're no problem, we'll get through that, we'll go golden zone, right? Golden zone's more responsive. But note here, right, we only made the 38 here, so I'd feel a whole lot better if we're getting up here, getting through that. We get to this zone here where you're forced to go back, right? Then we're back here looking at the whole thing again. Right, but this one, not in shit, that one will be in play, right? It could be either of these. We don't know. That's the problem right there, right? So which one? Well, this is the higher of the two, so might be this is the one we're going to run into first, right? So here's that 50. Again, we're mighty close to that structure here. So can we get up and through that and get into this? Well, that would start to. Well, let me get that off of there. That would start to set this up a little bit better. Swear trading view. One day I would just so love it if they fixed that retarded feature. Okay, here we go. Now maybe we don't have that kind of legs there. That's 3 hour. Let's see if we get any help here for some market geometry. Right, we had that one set of median lines here that I've taken off. This is. Well, I'd probably do it twice here. I would probably just stay with median lines here. I was looking at whether a channel is going to be any more help to us. It's not necessarily here. I might look for some of that intersection, but shit. Yeah, let's just take that one off. This is kind of interesting here, right? Often you'll see that intersection between the median line and the channel, the upper parallel here. So that, is a candidate here. And then you'd have a more shallow 4 here. So, don't make assumptions here that we've broken the one high, we're off, we're going to the 1618. Not so fast. But this is what caught my eye over here, is this big gap, right? This big, well, you may saw my point here. Over here, we got that big gap here, and that structure here we're going to need to get through. So I would wait myself. I just wouldn't buy this on the fly here. It's climbing. It's just broken this pivot. I want to see it come back. Maybe we're going to come back and test from above. So just wicking that off here. So let's get through it, come back, retest. That I think is very viable, right? Because we don't know where that 3 is going to go in, right? Here's the minimum requirement. That's what I'd suggest here. I'd wait to get this pivot, wait for the 4, buy the 4 into the 5. If you get that, then I'd wait for the I'd wait for the next 4, buy the 4 into the 5, and then if you ultimately complete a motive here, then you're waiting for the ABC to buy into the 2 to the 3. So pretty much, you know, if it's going to play ball and just continue on here, every one of these retracements is an opportunity to get long. All right, guys, that seems pretty straightforward. Okay, there we go. All right, back to you. I'm going to do, I've got at least one more to go. All right, guys, back to you.